Denver Broncos have hired former Saints head coach Sean Payton, baby. We're holding. Ah!
What the hell is pimento cheese?
Tom Brady has announced his retirement from the NFL. For real this time. Come on, kick the field goal, take the points. Win the game.
No, you have to say that.
See you later.
Welcome to Ruffing the Passer, show that talks football and miscellaneous stuff, and mostly football with honest feelings. I am your host, Sam Ruffing, and this is Ruffing the Passer, episode 77. That's right, I'm numbered now. I finally have all of them down. From here on out, these episodes shall be numbered. And in this week's episode, I'll be discussing Brian Harmon's Open win, Justin Herbert's contract extension, why the Open Championship should not be the final major in the year, and more. But the first topic I want to get on to relates to the 10th gambling suspension for an NFL player. Woohoo! Anyways, earlier this week, a Broncos player by the name of... I don't even want to try pronouncing that. I have no idea where to begin. Was suspended for violating the NFL's gambling policy and has been suspended indefinitely, so at least one season. And obviously this is a bit problematic for the NFL. But I don't want to get on to that. I want to get on to the Broncos head coach Sean Payton, who with an interview of USA Today shared his thoughts on the NFL's, on obviously his player suspension, and how terribly the NFL gambling policy has been explained and it just is in general. And honestly, his thoughts and just opinion on it is 100% correct in my mind. I want to read you this because, man, it's fantastic. All right, so on the NFL gambling policy with USA Today, Sean Payton says, and I quote, "When you get a bunch of D's, which I think means suspension, you have to look at the message, basically, what the NFL is saying, or how it's portrayed or whatever. You have to look at the message, and we've had a lot of D's in our league this year with this policy. So the policy being how terrible the NFL's... Well, okay. The policy for NFL's stance on gambling for players is you cannot bet on NFL games, at least as far as I'm concerned. You can bet on other sports games, but you cannot bet on in a team facility, airplane, or hotel. Or stadium, obviously. So basically anything to do with the team, you cannot do that. Now, it took me forever to actually learn this because it was a very confusing process, so yeah. He goes on to say this about his player being the 10th player suspended for violating the gambling policy. So this is what he says about the guy who was just suspended who plays for him, and this guy. Anyway, shame on us. And we're going to send them home for a year where they can't be around. The idea that they're just going to go away, shame on us. As pointed out by the CBS article, which I read this on, Payton is taking issues with the league's approach to gambling and how it's conveyed to the players. Payton is not excusing players for gambling, but he does understand that the way the rules were explained is confusing, and so could see how a player could screw up. So confusing with the new policy that Payton explained the rules to his team in his own, less confusing terms, saying, and I quote, "You can't bet on NFL games, ever, ever, ever." That's simple enough. And I don't give a flying flippin' fudge what it is. He's then compared the gambling, or the NFL's message on its gambling policy to the NFL's gun policy. Saying, and I quote, The other thing is, it's the same as the gun policy. You can't bet on nothing. Nothing. Can't bet on a double negative. Really, Peyton? Okay, you need to work on that. Anyways, if you're at the facility, your hotel, your plane, basically wherever you can't take a gun, you can't place a bet. That, honestly, is a fairly good explanation. I mean, yeah, wherever you can't take a gun, can't place a bet. He should be going around the leagues, all sports leagues, and explaining this. Although the only thing I would change is when you're doing the Memphis Grizzlies and you're explaining the gambling policy to them, you might want to use a different analogy than guns. I don't think John Morant's going to understand that one. Just saying. But here's the best part of the interview, where Peyton says, and I quote, "I know this. There are a handful of owners who are owning these problems. A player can't have a share of DraftKings or FanDuel. It's shameful and embarrassing." And Peyton is 100% correct with this evaluation. Obviously, it is incredibly sad that, 10 players have been suspended for gambling. It makes the league look bad, especially since people already think the league is kind of rigged. And it doesn't help that, gambling showed up and suddenly a lot of players got weird. The refs are making stupid holding calls in the Super Bowl. All that. But also, you can understand why players are getting confused. It says you can't gamble at, a team facility, a hotel, and a plane. But it doesn't say you can't gamble. So a player can gamble just as long as it's not at the facility or in NFL games. Is that it? Can you see why that would be confusing? I can gamble, but I can't gamble here, here, and here. So you mean my work, the place I stay in work, the place I fly to work, most of my time being spent, I can't gamble. I mean, I like how Sean Payton explained it. Basically, just, wherever you can't take a gun, you can't gamble. That was fairly simple. Because, man, a player might be confused because team facility, what counts as a team facility? Hotel, yeah. And also my favorite part of the entire interview was just when Sean Payton decided to roast the owners and league, who are obviously all, "Oh, we can't have our players gamble. They shall not commit the sin of gambling. This take was brought to you by FanDuel." League sponsored by BetMGM and all the other sports books. And man, if you see that and you're a player, like, so hold on. I can't gamble on games. I can't take sponsorships from these guys. But you guys can go ahead and I can't gamble at the team facility, but you guys can be sponsored by gambling sites like FanDuel or whatever. That's kind of stupid. Don't you kind of agree? And of course there are media who are like, "Oh, it doesn't matter." The high and mighty media who just, it does not matter that the, league is sponsored by gambling. It does not excuse players gambling. Sure, it doesn't excuse players gambling, but I mean, like, it doesn't help the matter. It kind of looks very hypocritical. And obviously the same people who call out the whole, players for gambling, even though the NFL goes around supporting gambling unless their own players do it in a very hypocritical way, are also sponsored by sportsbooks most of the time. I mean, Colin Cowherd obviously was like, "Oh, you should not gamble no matter what," while just defending the NFL for having gambling sponsors. Yeah, that's funny because he always has his Blazing 5 every week where he says you should not gamble as an NFL player. Yet he's out there making picks sponsored by FoxBet. Oh, isn't that interesting? I'm sure most other players who, people who get sponsored by gambling sites are obviously calling for the players to stop gambling while they themselves are promoting it to the rest of the world. And obviously, I just like to say I support the YouTubers who are been sponsored by DraftKings and such and are still calling out the NFL for this crap. Good on you. And yeah, there's more. And even though I like the way Payton explained it, the whole policy on players not being allowed to gamble at the team facility is really stupid. I'm sorry, that's just... What do you expect's gonna happen? They say you can gamble, you just can't gamble. Here. Of course they're gonna try and gamble. They say you can. You allow the little hatch, they're gonna try it. And it's not like... And if they're gonna bet on NFL games, yeah, that's a huge issue. But like other sports, they can't gamble at a facility. Why? What do you think a player is most of the day? He wakes up at like 7, let's just say that's probably pretty late in the day for an NFL player. Say he arrives there at 7, leaves at 7. Most sports games that he could gamble on are going to be being played throughout the day that he's at work. And say like a really good line pops up for a baseball game between the Yankees and Mets or whatever, and he can take advantage of that. But he's at the team facility. You just gotta not allow him to take it? It's not betting on NFL games. The team around him is promoting gambling, or has been sponsored by gambling. Why the heck would that be worthy of suspension? That's just really stupid. Honestly, just stupid. I know Payton didn't say this, I'm just adding this, but that's just ridiculous. And also, I do agree with Payton on the shame on us for sending players home for a year after being suspended. Like, just no talk, no contact. Like, you're gonna send players home for a year because we poorly explained how the gambling policy, that is incredibly stupid, works. And it's their fault somehow. Sure. I mean, either what I think should be done is player gets caught for gambling, brought into the NFL, and they're like, sorry, we didn't explain this very well. Here's how the policy works. Can't gamble at a facility, hotel, airplane, wherever you can't take a gun, you can't gamble. If you want to gamble at your house, fine. Just don't bet on NFL games. And, hand them with like a 2-game suspension or whatever and like a $5,000 and a big fine. And then they move on. And if they then continue to gamble at the team facility, or, which, if you're going to follow that rule, or gamble on an NFL game, then yeah, you strike them down with a whole year suspension. But this whole, sorry, we explained it poorly, but you violated it, so here we go, 1 year suspension. It's kind of just, wow, that's just rude, kind of unfair a little bit. And good on Sean Payton for calling it out. I applaud you. And obviously I applaud him for other comments he made, but that's a different episode. That's later. Sean Payton may not work out in Denver. Who knows? I think he will. At least be decent. But at least I appreciate his honesty and his calling out of the BS around the whole gambling policy. Good on you, Sean. Moving on, we had the Open Championship this past weekend at Royal Liverpool, and what a boring major it was. Listen, I'm just going to say it was boring. I mean, obviously I barely got to watch it because the coverage was even worse than the US Open somehow. You needed Peacock Premium to watch, and you'd have to sign in for the Open.com website to view it, which is stupid. I mean, at least the USGA allows you to watch the, featured groups for free. PGA, you can watch the CBS Sports app for free. And obviously the Masters has the greatest coverage ever. You can just watch it out wherever, just with the app. It's beautiful. But no, the coverage is even worse for the British Open somehow. Despite that, however, I would like to congratulate the Open winner, Brian Harman. Good job. You played unbelievably dominant golf. He just took that course and ripped it to shreds. While everyone else was tied for second at 7 under, you went and shot 12 under. And did it without bombing it over everybody, without being a fantastic wedge player, without bombing it over. You played it just solidly. Fairways, greens, and one of the hottest putters ever. It was truly masterful to watch him work his magic. I mean, he made 58 of 59 putts from inside 10 feet. Do you know how hard it is to make 58 of 59 putts from inside 10 feet? The PGA Tour average from 8 feet is less than 50%. That is mind-boggling. Yeah, I just made 99% of my putts. Jeez, man. This isn't disc golf. Heck, if you had a disc golfer, pro, from 10 feet, give him 58, I don't think he would make 58 out of 59. He'd probably make 57 out of 59. That's how unbelievably dominant it was. But back on how boring it was, it just wasn't really a competition. Brian Harman took the lead day 1, or day 2, sorry, and then held it from there on out, and he played obviously great golf. Good support for him. But yeah. Listen, I know I kind of joked that the British Open was the 3rd best major. But I mean, the US Open always has drama every year. Even if the coverage is terrible. It's obviously going to say it's better than the British Open. I'm here in America. The Masters have the greatest course in the world in Augusta National and just best coverage ever. The PGA Championship is always surprisingly close. It's just put in a terrible time slot. British Open's just kind of lame. Outside of the Cam Smith, obviously dominant comeback performance at the 150th, which was spectacular. Yeah. Links golf's cool and all. I really do like links golf. It's just that particular major was kind of boring. And you know what? At least an underdog won, though. I do love a good underdog story. Seeing Brian Harman, who's, competed at opens before. He's had, a lot of top 25s and majors. He has 2 PGA Tour wins, but hadn't won in 6 years. To see him go out there and perform to the best tournament of his life and win was just unbelievable. He's now going to be on the Ryder Cup team, and he'll probably be a scary good underdog there because he's a good match player. In the whatever the heck the amateur Walker Cup teams, he was really, really good back in the day. And now he'll be playing on a Ryder Cup team, and watch out, Europe. Yeah. But one thing about underdogs, as I noticed with fans and media, is that we always want an underdog win. We love underdogs winning. Francis, we met back in 1913. Oh, that was a beautiful one. The Danny Willett in 2016 was obviously a fantastic win. But then we actually get an underdog who has a lead. And golf fans, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the media, the way they portray it, go nuts when an underdog wins. Not in a good way. They're always like, blow it. And it's like, what? If you were on the r/golf chat for the open round of the 4th round of the Open, the amount of people rooting for Harman to blow it was insane. It's like the same amount of people who are rooting for Wyndham Clark to blow it, the same amount of people, which I am absolutely disgusted by, when they were rooting for Mito Pereira to hit the ball in the water on 18, and he actually did it. That was incredibly rude. I'm just shocked and appalled. I mean, we want more underdog. We say we want more underdog wins, but then we actually get an underdog win, and you guys aren't happy? What gives? Oh, it's because you were told, but you know what it is? It's because the media is always trying to hype up the stars when they really shouldn't. I know golf's an individual sport, but I was watching this show called The Thinking Man Show, which is a great show, podcast type thing. And they're talking about how the media coverage leading up to the Open was really bad because all they did was promote stars, and obviously when the stars didn't play well, it kind of soured the taste of everyone's Open. I mean, they always promote Rory before the Open. It's just like, ugh. Here we go with the Rory hype train. I'm so sick of it. You know what? Rory ain't winning for a long time, I guess. I'm not saying he's a bad golfer. He's a great golfer. He's won 4 majors. Can we just let it go? There's nothing wrong with just letting Rory be another dude out there. Listen, he's had his opportunities. Could have won the US Open this year. He could have won the British Open last year. Could have won plenty of other tournaments. Has he? No. So can we stop with the Rory hype train? Just sick of it. And when what they pointed out in the show was if you just promote the stars and they don't do well, people just end up disappointed, as I've already said. What they should be focusing on is promoting the golf, like the ups and downs and curves and whirly-birds and craziness of links golf and how unpredictable it is. Like what Live Golf does rather well. They try to promote the golf with the team element, and they show tons of shots. They show everybody. That's what coverage should be more about, just about the golf course. Ooh, look at the cool curves and whatnot. The game itself, how wild it can be. Because then you just watch and you're like, ooh, that was a cool golf shot. I wonder who that guy is. And then you see one and you're like, good for him. You're not like, dang it, Rory, why'd you blow it again? Oh, I can't believe Brian Harmon won. Stuff like that. That's what it should be more about. About the golf, less about the star, because, man, were TV networks spoiled back in the past 20 years when Tiger Woods was dominant. 25 years when Tiger Woods was dominant. I mean, him coming in, being a star who just won all the time was obviously fantastic for ratings and whatnot, but he's a unicorn who comes around once a generation. You don't get a Tiger, well, 2 generations, doesn't matter. You don't get a Tiger Woods all the time. So, the fact that they keep trying to promote guys like Rory, who only has 4 wins and hasn't won in over 10 years, or Scotty, or, jeez, John Rahm, it kind of gets... they're just setting up for disappointment. I'm just saying it. You're setting up for disappointment. And of these people rooting against the underdog, which it should not be about. It should be about the golf and whoever wins. Stuff like that. That's my 2 cents. Also, the British Open's now just over. That's it. No more majors for the year. And I'm just trying to figure out who thought it was a good idea to move the PGA Championship back from August to May. That has got to be one of the worst decisions in the history of sports. I mean, it's July, it's the middle of golf season, and yet all the majors are done. Nada. Just gone. You have to wait another 9 months till Augusta National. That's a terrible move. Golf season runs from April, the Masters, which is a perfect start, all the way to the end of September if you want to be lucky. But let's just say to the end of August, because that's when, summer ends and school starts for all those children. And that is a perfect calendar with which it used to be played for the majors. I mean, there's another month and a half left of golf, and it's not being used by a giant event, and it's just a shame. And no, I don't count the FedEx Cup as a giant event. It's kind of It's cool, but it's It's not a major. I mean, the final term is just 30 people. Okay. Tour Championship's kind of interesting, but you know what I mean. It's just a crying shame because, this was just not a good move. You have the start of April, the start of spring, the start of golf season with the Masters. Then in the middle of June, you had the US Open, played in America. It's America's major. It is, just anyone can play it. As long as you qualify, anyone can win it. It's usually at giant courses holding lots of people. It's a party. It's USA. And then you have the British Open, which is obviously representing all of Great Britain. And it is the oldest major. It's got the history. It's got the class. And it's still a national championship, and it is beloved. And the PGA Championship was the final major of the year. It was the last gasp to grab a major. It also used to be match play, which would have made a hell of more interesting if we kept that around, but I digress. Oh my gosh, a match play major. If you made the PGA Championship match play, that would be awesome. It would be kind of boring, but kind of cool. Not gonna lie. Because that would just create so much parity. It'd be insane. But anyways, the PGA Championship stood out from obviously not being the most prestigious course like the Masters, and not the United States' Open, nor the British's Classic Open. It was the last gasp, the thing to end the golf season, to get players one final chance. And it was beautiful. It ended the season after the FedEx Cup, and then you just waited around for the Ryder Cup, and it was perfect. They decided to move it back to May, right between the most prestigious golf tournament in the world, in the Masters, and the United States Open. Shortening the golf major season by just 4 seasons instead of 5 seasons, and making the PGA Championship lose all its meaning, any importance it ever had. It's just another major now. I mean, obviously I've already mentioned all the other great things at the US Open, the United States Open, British Open. It's the British Open. Masters, it's the most prestigious one. What's the PGA now? It's just like a second US Open, because it's played in America at, a tough course like the US Open, but not usually as tough. And it's just kind of slapped there in the middle, and it's everyone's least favorite. There's nothing special about it. It's just kind of there. And it didn't used to be that way. It used to be right smack dab in the end. Golf's last chance, ending the golf season right after the FedEx Cup. And with the PGA, the Professional Golf Association of America, just right there. It was right there. It's perfect. And they decided, no, we're going to move it back so we don't conflict with the PGA Tour schedule. You're the PGA. You're the one who controls who plays on the Ryder Cup team. You're the one who controls the major. And you're bowing down to the PGA Tour? That is just a stupid move. I mean, PGA wasn't never perfect. It could have been better. It could have been a global major. I mean, if I were running the PGA, I know it's the PGA of America, but still, make it a global major. Move it to Canada for a year, move it to Mexico. Well, maybe not Mexico. Have it in Ireland. You can have it in France. You could have it in South Africa. You could have it in Australia. That would be awesome. They would give it something interesting. It's just a constantly moving major, showing off new courses everywhere. But no, they decided to move it to May. And it's just wrong, because now golf season feels kind of meaningless without the majors. Like, most people just watch for the majors. Well, they also watch the Ryder Cup. But yeah, if the only way I could see filling this void is if they have the Live Golf versus PGA Tour yearly battle. That would draw some interest. You could do like January or something. But anyways, just that would draw some interest. But just the majors closing now just feels like a waste when there's still beautiful summer months left and the golf season's still going. It's just the middle of golf season, people. That's my 2 cents and rant. Moving on to the NFL. Back to the NFL. Justin Herbert, quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers, was recently paid and became, highly paid, with like a $260 million extension from the Chargers. And yeah, this was a fantastic move, the right move to make as the Chargers. Because you know what? Justin Herbert's come in and all he's ever been is great. Most touchdown passes as a rookie behind a terrible O-line. He's had to deal with a terrible coach in Brandon Staley. And, that unfortunate playoff loss, which was kind of his fault, I'm not going to lie, but also kind of Brandon Staley's fault. But it's like, obviously, you have players who take pay cuts, and I just want to say that, yeah, good move by the Chargers. None of this was Justin Herbert's fault for how the lack of playoffs. I mean, the ownership is the real problem with LA, and until that is sold and figured out, that nothing's going to change. But also, I really noticed that in this contract negotiation, there were no holdouts. There were no bickering, no arguing. It just happened. He just took the $260 million he was paid, and he went away. He didn't ask for a fully guaranteed contract like Lamar Jackson. There was no bickering and arguing. It was just done well. And no, I'm not supporting being a schoolboy who just submits and follows along with the rules, but the Chargers recognize that they have a top franchise caliber talent who has dealt with little injuries and isn't being helped the most by the coaching. But even still, they realize that he is a top player and needs to get paid. The Ravens... I don't know. Should we pay Lamar? He's only been the best player for us, and besides Justin Tucker. I say that as a joke, because Justin Tucker is the best kicker in the NFL. Anyways, I don't know. Should we pay Lamar? I don't know. He's been kind of injured. He can't really throw. And of course, Lamar wasn't completely innocent. Hell, on this, you weren't going to get a fully guaranteed contract, man. I understand going for it, but you weren't going to get it. And it took after so long to finally get that done. Whereas the Chargers just you know what? You're a great player. Here's the contract. And Justin Herbert's like, sweet. Done. Of course, the Ravens are a better run organization. So I don't know what that really says, but yeah. Speaking of contract extensions, there was one that happened a month ago, which obviously this is very late breaking. This isn't even breaking news. This is very late news, old news. But I just want to talk about it because it made no sense to me whatsoever. The Buffalo Bills extended Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, not to be confused with Billy Beane, to contract extensions through 2025, I don't know, or 2027. I'm not sure what, but they extended head coach Sean McDermott. Obviously, I'm fine with the Brandon Beane signing. He's been a great GM. He drafted Josh Allen. Did he draft Josh Allen? May not have drafted Josh Allen. And he's drafted great players. He got the Stephon Diggs trade. Been perfectly fine. Sean McDermott, however, really? You're re-signing Sean McDermott. Listen, I know he has been a great coach in the league thus far. Or at least a good coach. He's got the team to the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. 18 years. I understand that he's won the division back-to-back years. But the man also has blown playoff game after playoff game after playoff game through no fault but his own. Honestly, I mean, he's a defensive coordinator whose defense always blows it in the playoffs. I mean, a defensive coach. He never develops an offense, and he just keeps doing the same thing. And now he's got Stephon Diggs, who is complaining about him and the organization, and you're keeping him around. You're keeping Sean McDermott around. I don't get it. Sean McDermott had every right to destroy the Bengals last season and in Buffalo, and the Bills weren't prepared at their home stadium with a Damar Hamlin return. With the snow. They couldn't play in the snow? And he should have been fired after that game, mind you, but he wasn't. He has had 5 years of Josh Allen, and he has yet to develop a run game outside of, Josh Allen himself. He hasn't tried to fix the O-line, really, at least much. He hasn't tried to go out and sign weapons like DeAndre Hopkins or Dalvin Cook. He's only signed, the Emmanuel Sanders, or obviously the Stephon Diggs trade was great, but Dawson Knox, it's all right. But, he's a defensive coach whose defense has allowed 29.5 points per game, averaging in his last 4 playoff games. 29.9. You can't even coach the thing you're supposed to be doing. And I know Leslie Frazier's gone, so that helps. But even still, you can't get that down a little? And it's not like you haven't got any players. You've signed Von Miller. You've signed re-signed Ed Oliver. You signed Leonard Floyd. You signed all these players. And still the defense does not get better. And this is one of the things I don't understand about defensive coaches or just coaches in general who have one particular side of the ball. They always try to sign players or draft players who fit that side of the ball. At least the okay coaches. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, okay, he's done pretty well, but I mean, Sean McDermott, what does he do? He signs defensive player, and then Vic Fangio only signed defensive players, and high caliber defensive player, drafted high caliber defensive players. You had, what was his name? I don't know, but you get the point. But when you have other coaches who haven't done that, and they've gone on to build better success. I mean, Bill Belichick is the perfect example. I mean, he's a defensive guru, and obviously his offense has not been good recently, but in his prime, Belichick was letting the defense be built up by, just second-round picks and signed players and drafting and just what he was good at, while also signing top-tier talent on the offense to go with Tom Brady. Randy Moss, Antonio Brown for a little bit. Obviously, that didn't last. Wes Welker, Gronk, signing O-linemen like Trent Brown, and building it and just like, you know what? I know how to run a defense, so I'm just going to try and improve my offense, which I am not as talented at, but I can do. Mike Tomlin, obviously, is a defensive guy, but still he can draft receivers like nobody's business and develop him. Kyle Shanahan, even though he does sign a lot of offensive weapons, also signs a lot of defensive players to go with his team because he understands that, yeah, I can coach an offense. Sean McVay can coach an offense, but he also signs defensive players. Andy Reid is obviously very guilty of this, but I just don't understand Sean McDermott's and other coaches who can clearly just use their defensive mind and prowess to coach a defense. But instead they decide to just sign a bunch of players that will already be good on that defense instead of neglect the offense. And you re-sign this man when he hasn't even made a Super Bowl yet. That is a very, very dumb decision that I don't like by the Buffalo Bills. Maybe not dumb, but I don't like it. This has been Ruffing the Passer. The show is talk football, miscellaneous stuff, and mostly football with my honest feelings. Honest feeling. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Like, subscribe, comment, blah, 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 blah. Hit the bell. See ya.